Cases of killers who show no remorse in court are particularly shocking and disturbing. These individuals have taken another person's life and seem to feel no sense of guilt or responsibility for their actions. Their lack of remorse can be seen in their demeanor, their words, and their actions during court proceedings. When a killer shows no remorse in court, it can have a profound impact on the victims' families and the community as a whole. It can make it difficult for those affected by the crime to find closure or to come to terms with what has happened. It can also make it harder for society to understand how such a crime could happen and to prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. He was responsible for the deaths of at least 30 young women in the 1970s and was known for his charming demeanor and good looks, which he used to lure his victims. Bundy was finally caught in 1978 and brought to trial for his crimes. During his trial, Bundy continued to deny his guilt and showed no remorse for his actions. In fact, he acted as his own defense attorney and tried to manipulate the court proceedings to his advantage. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Bundy maintained his innocence and even tried to blame his crimes on a mental disorder. He was eventually convicted and sentenced to death for his crimes. Throughout his trial, and even up until his execution in 1989, Bundy showed no remorse for the pain and suffering he had caused to his victims and their families. His lack of remorse and his charming demeanor have made him a subject of fascination and horror for many people. Anders Breivik. Anders Breivik is a Norwegian far-right extremist who was responsible for the 2011 terrorist attacks in Norway that claimed the lives of 77 people, most of them young people attending a political youth camp. Breivik's attacks were motivated by his extreme right-wing ideology, which he saw as being threatened by multiculturalism and Islam. During his trial, Breivik showed no remorse for his actions and even used the court proceedings as a platform to promote his ideology. He described his attacks as cruel but necessary and said that he would do it again if given the chance. Breivik's lack of remorse and his extreme views shocked and outraged many people in Norway and around the world. He was eventually found guilty of terrorism and sentenced to the maximum sentence of 21 years in prison, although his sentence could be extended indefinitely if he is still considered a danger to society at the end of that time. Dylan Roof. Dylan Roof is a white supremacist who was responsible for the 2015 shooting at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina. During a Bible study session at the church, Roof opened fire and killed 9 African American worshipers, including the church's pastor. Roof's motives for the attack were clearly racially motivated, as he later admitted that he had hoped to start a race war. During his trial, Roof showed no remorse for his actions and even told the jury that he would do it again if given the chance. Roof's lack of remorse and his extreme views have been widely condemned by people all over the world. He was eventually found guilty of hate crimes and sentenced to death, although the sentence has been challenged in court and is currently being reviewed by the Supreme Court. The Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church shooting was a tragic reminder of the persistence of racism and the ongoing struggle for equality in America. Roof's actions and his lack of remorse serve as a stark warning of the dangers of extremist ideologies and the importance of standing up against hate and intolerance in all its forms. Jodi Arias. Jodi Arias is a convicted murderer who killed her ex-boyfriend, Travis Alexander, in 2008. During her trial, Arias initially denied any involvement in Alexander's death, but eventually admitted to killing him in self-defense. Despite her claims of self-defense, the prosecution argued that the killing was premeditated and that Arias had killed Alexander in a jealous rage. During her trial, Arias showed no remorse for her actions and even gave a graphic and detailed testimony about the killing. Arias' lack of remorse and her detailed description of the killing shocked and horrified many people, and she was eventually found guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Jodi Arias case was widely covered by the media and sparked intense debate about the nature of domestic violence and the limits of self-defense. Aria's lack of remorse and her graphic testimony have also raised questions about the nature of violence and the responsibility of individuals for their actions. Timothy McVeigh. Timothy McVeigh was a domestic terrorist who carried out the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995, which killed 168 people and injured hundreds more. The bombing was one of the deadliest acts of domestic terrorism in U.S. history and was motivated by McVeigh's extreme right-wing beliefs and his anger towards the federal government. During his trial, McVeigh showed no remorse for his actions and even sought to justify the bombing as a necessary response to what he saw as government overreach and tyranny. He referred to the victims of the bombing as collateral damage and expressed no empathy for the families and loved ones of those killed and injured. McVeigh's lack of remorse and his extreme views shocked and outraged many people, and he was eventually sentenced to death for his crimes. He was executed by lethal injection in 2001. The Oklahoma City bombing was a tragic reminder of the dangers of extremism and the need for vigilance against domestic terrorism. McVeigh's lack of remorse and his justifications for the bombing also highlight the danger of allowing extremist ideologies to take hold and the importance of standing up against hate and intolerance in all its forms.